Welcome to the Midnight Mind. Subscribe if you're new here, and if you enjoy this kind of content, hit the like button too, it really helps. You know what time it is? It's midnight. It's time to enter the mind of Machiavelli. Have you ever been in a room where something felt off, but you couldn't explain why? As though your choices weren't entirely yours. As if some invisible hand had nudged you into deciding. You might have agreed to a favour you didn't want to do. You may have given ground in an argument you knew you should have won. You trusted someone who later showed a very different face. If you've lived long enough, you've felt it. What you felt was manipulation. The unsettling truth is this: manipulation happens every single day. It comes from people close to you, from institutions, from leaders, even from strangers who understand the hidden levers of the mind. The most skilled manipulators don't force you, they guide you invisibly. They make you believe the choice was yours. They let you carry the blame for decisions that were never really your own. That's what makes it so dangerous. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology. In The Prince, he described how power is gained and maintained, not only through violence, but through influence, persuasion, and appearances. He observed that people are driven less by truth than by perception. Men generally judge more by their eyes than by their hands, he wrote. For everyone can see, but few can touch. In other words, most believe what looks convincing, not what is real. The manipulator lives in this gap. And manipulation rarely begins with words. It begins with careful observation. The manipulator studies you. They notice how you react under pressure. They listen for the things that make your voice tremble. They pay attention to what wins your approval, and what makes you shrink from rejection. Slowly, they catalogue your insecurities. Then, without obvious force, they act. A compliment here, a sigh there, a suggestion dressed in guilt. And suddenly, you are yielding, convinced it was your own decision. Manipulation wears many disguises. Some approaches are drenched in charm. The manipulator flatters you, makes you feel uniquely valued, until you feel you owe them something. Others work through guilt, painting themselves as victims of circumstance. One look of disapproval, one remark about your selfishness, and you bend. The most ruthless use fear. They whisper that if you leave, you will be alone. If you resist, you will regret it. They don't bind you with chains, they bind you with your own thoughts. These tactics succeed only because of what already lives inside you. Manipulation enters through the cracks in the armour. For some, it is the hunger for approval, born from a childhood where love had to be earned. For others, it's guilt, taught that boundaries are selfish, while self-sacrifice is noble. For many, it is fear. The fear of rejection, loneliness, or being forgotten. The manipulator doesn't create these weaknesses, they exploit them. You are not manipulated because you are weak. You're manipulated because you are human. Every person has blind spots, old wounds, or unexamined habits. But those who refuse to examine them remain the easiest to control. Freedom begins with shining a light on your patterns. Once you know where the cracks are, you can seal them. When you understand what drives you, you cannot be driven by others. The first defense is awareness. Learn to notice when guilt forces your hand, when fear clouds your judgment, when approval matters more than truth. Each moment of recognition weakens the manipulator's hold. Awareness creates distance, and distance allows you to see clearly. Most of their influence relies on speed. They want you to react before you think. Slowing down the game is your greatest weapon. The second defense is strategic detachment, something Machiavelli himself would have respected. Learn to observe without rushing into action. When flattered, let the words pass through you instead of seeping in. When guilt is used against you, pause before responding. When fear is invoked, test it against reality. Detachment gives you space to see whether you are being guided or manipulated. The third defense is unpredictability. Manipulators thrive on patterns. They count on your reacting the same way each time. If they cry, you comfort. If they flatter, you soften. If they press, you yield. Break the pattern, and their strategy collapses. Refuse to play the role they've written for you. Say no where you once said yes. Stay silent where you once explained. Walk away where you once argued. Nothing unsettles a manipulator more than unpredictability. And finally, build a strong identity. The clearer you know who you are, the less control others have over you. Manipulators twist your self-image until you see yourself through their lens. They want you doubting your worth, second-guessing your instincts, leaning on them for validation. A man anchored in his own identity cannot be shifted so easily. His decisions come from within, not from the influence of others. Machiavelli's lesson is not that manipulation is rare. His lesson is that manipulation is everywhere. Appearances, influence, perception. These shape the lives of men more than truth ever has. To survive, you must accept this. To thrive, you must master it. Freedom isn't about trusting blindly. It's about seeing clearly. It's about living with awareness and refusing to yield control to your mind. Once you grasp this, the game ends. You're no longer a puppet reacting to strings you cannot see. You no longer yield out of guilt, fear, or hunger for approval. You begin to move with intention, decide with clarity, and live with strength. And when that happens, no manipulator can touch you, because their power relies on the blind, and you no longer live in blindness. Once you begin to see manipulation clearly, you realize it doesn't come only from enemies or strangers. Often, it comes from the people closest to you: family, friends, colleagues, even partners. They may not mean harm, but they know which buttons to press. They know the exact words, the exact tone, the exact silence that pulls you into action. And if you're not careful, you may mistake this familiarity as honesty. But intention doesn't erase impact. Whether conscious or not, manipulation works the same way. It uses your emotions against you. It bypasses reason and appeals directly to your fears, your hopes, your guilt. And if you give in, even once, the manipulator learns the pattern. They learn that guilt gets results. They learn that flattery softens your defenses. They learn that silence makes you explain yourself. Each reaction becomes a tool they can use again and again. Machiavelli warned that power is rarely taken by force. It's surrendered piece by piece. And most people surrender it without realizing. They surrender it when they explain themselves too much. They surrender it when they try to please everyone. They surrender it when they trade truth for harmony. Once given, that power is hard to reclaim. The manipulator builds their strength out of the control you abandon. This is why awareness alone is not enough. You must develop a code of conduct that cannot be bent by persuasion. A personal law that governs your decisions regardless of pressure. Without this, you are swayed by every voice, every sigh, every glance. With it, you become steady. A person with firm principles is difficult to move. And when you are difficult to move, you are difficult to manipulate. But firmness doesn't mean aggression. It doesn't mean meeting manipulation with anger. In fact, manipulators thrive on emotional reactions. They want you upset, flustered, desperate to explain. The calmer you remain, the weaker their strategy becomes. Calmness is not passivity. It is control. It shows that you are not living at the mercy of someone else's tactics. Another powerful defense is the ability to embrace discomfort. Manipulation often works because people fear conflict. They give in to avoid the awkward silence, the disapproving glance, the raised voice. They surrender to keep the peace. But peace bought at the price of self-respect is not peace. It is quiet control. When you learn to hold steady through discomfort, manipulation loses its grip. You realize that silence cannot harm you. Disapproval cannot harm you. Only surrender harms you. Machiavelli understood that appearances are powerful, but he also understood that appearances can be weaponized. Manipulators thrive on reputation, yours, not theirs. They hint that resistance will make you look foolish, cruel, or unkind. They play on your concern for how others perceive you. And so you yield, not because you agree, but because you fear the appearance of disagreement. This is one of the most effective manipulations. To resist it, you must value truth above appearances. What is right is often not what looks pleasing. Consider the manipulator who claims to be the victim. They tell stories of their suffering, exaggerating pain to bind you in sympathy. You bend your boundaries out of compassion, but compassion without discernment becomes servitude. The manipulator is not always lying about their pain, but they use that pain as a weapon to control your choices. Here, discipline means caring without being captured, listening without being led. On the opposite side is the manipulator who showers you with praise. They make you feel seen, admired, even special. But every compliment carries an unspoken price. Soon, you begin to shape yourself to keep the praise flowing. You act not from conviction, but from the desire to be admired. You have traded your independence for approval. And once again, the manipulator owns you, not through force, but through flattery. Then there is the manipulator of fear. This is the most ruthless strategy of all. They paint pictures of disaster if you resist. If you say no, they suggest you'll regret it. If you break away, they warn you'll be abandoned. They don't prove these threats, they imply them. An implication is often more powerful than fact. For the mind, once infected with fear, supplies its own evidence. To resist this, you must learn to separate possibility from certainty. Fear whispers in the language of inevitability. Clarity reminds you that most threats are illusions. It's important to understand manipulation succeeds because of repetition. Rarely does one attempt succeed fully. Instead, it is the drip of influence, the slow erosion of confidence, the steady conditioning of your responses. Over time, you find yourself in a position you swore you'd never enter. This is why vigilance must be constant. The manipulator doesn't win with a single move. They win by making you forget you're in the game at all. The responsibility then is yours, not to change the manipulator, but to master your own reactions. You cannot control their tactics. You can only control your boundaries. You cannot stop them from attempting influence. You can only stop yourself from surrendering to it. This is where freedom begins. It doesn't come from demanding that others treat you fairly. It comes from treating yourself with enough respect to stand firm when they do not. Machiavelli believed that a prince must learn to be both fox and lion. The fox sees traps. The lion has the strength to resist them. To never be manipulated, you must be both. You must see the tactics clearly, and you must have the strength to stand when they are used against you. Awareness without strength leaves you vulnerable. Strength without awareness leaves you blind. Combined, they make you untouchable. Once you understand manipulation and discipline yourself against it, the question becomes, how do you live beyond it? For awareness alone is not enough. You must turn awareness into a way of life. Machiavelli knew that power is never secure. It must be defended continually. The same is true for freedom of the mind. The moment you relax, influence begins again. Lasting freedom comes only through daily practice. The first practice is clarity of identity. Manipulators thrive on uncertainty. They twist your image of yourself until you no longer know who you are. They exaggerate your flaws and dismiss your strengths. If you depend on them for validation, you're finished. A steady self-image is your armor. Know your values. Know your priorities. Know the line you will not cross. A man rooted in conviction cannot be moved by every passing option. The second practice is mastery of emotion. Every manipulator, from the subtle flatterer to the ruthless tyrant, depends on emotional reaction. They press until you panic, flatter until you soften, guilt until you yield. Emotion itself isn't the enemy. It is natural, human, unavoidable. The enemy is automatic reaction. The freer you are from instant response, the freer you are from manipulation. Train yourself to pause before speaking, to breathe before answering, to wait before deciding. The pause is the power. The third practice is the cultivation of detachment. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means refusing to let another person's strategy decide your behavior. If someone withdraws affection, let them. If someone praises you, enjoy it, but don't depend on it. If someone implies disaster, test their words against reality before reacting. Detachment creates space, and in that space, manipulation loses its urgency. When you're not rushed, you cannot be ruled. Machiavelli observed that appearances are often more influential than truth. For the manipulator, this is an opportunity. For you, it's a warning. Don't be fooled by surfaces. Learn to see behind the mask. People will present charm, authority, even kindness as a disguise for control. To see through appearances, you must train your perception. Look not only at words, but at patterns. Not only at promises, but at results. The manipulator relies on short memory. You must cultivate long memory. Another safeguard is unpredictability. Manipulators build strategies on your habits. If you always explain, they will provoke explanation. If you always rescue, they will play the victim. If you always yield, they will press harder. Break the pattern. Say no when you would normally explain. Stay silent when you would normally defend. Refuse when you would normally concede. This forces the manipulator to reveal themselves, and once revealed, their influence weakens. But perhaps the most important safeguard is discipline in solitude. Manipulation thrives in noise, distraction, and dependence. Solitude sharpens your perception. It strengthens your independence. In solitude, you examine your own motives, uncover your vulnerabilities, and repair the cracks in your armor. Solitude is where you rebuild the strength that the world erodes. Without it, you become exhausted, and exhaustion makes you an easy target. Jung once observed that people do not see reality. They project their own unconscious onto it. Manipulators exploit this. They plant suggestions that align with your own doubts and let you project the rest. The cure is self-awareness. The more you understand your inner world, the harder it is for anyone to twist it against you. He's powerful only when you remain blind to yourself. Remember this: manipulation will never disappear from the world. It's as old as humanity itself. It's used in politics, in business, in relationships, in every arena where influence matters. To imagine you can escape it completely is naive. But to live immune to it, that is possible. And immunity comes from mastery of self. The manipulator wins when you abandon yourself. He loses the moment you take full possession of who you are. Machiavelli advised rulers that fortune favors those who prepare. The same law applies here. If you prepare your mind, manipulation finds no entry. If you cultivate awareness, pause, and strength, the strategies of others collapse. They may try charm, fear, guilt, or praise, but none will succeed. For each tactic relies on a reaction. And you no longer supply it. In this way, you become untouchable. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. And that is the final truth. Freedom doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from refusing to let them control you. The manipulator builds castles in the minds of the unaware. Tear down the scaffolding and the castle vanishes. You're left with yourself. Clear, steady, and free. The one person they could never move without your permission. So live with clarity, live with strength, live with awareness, and remember, no one can manipulate a man who has mastered himself. Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Midnight Mind. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button for me. I really would appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.